Hello again, everyone. I am here with a bit of a status update on my transcription project, my fountain pen transcription project, where I'm transcribing all of Watership down into notebooks with fountain pens. I will put a link below to the video where I originally talked about this, and I'll probably put a link to the video where I wrote a passage on camera, which was, I enjoyed doing that. So I won't go too much into the setup other than to tell you that my current chapter that I'm working on is being written with this Waterman Filius, which is a great pen. The nib, even though it's stainless steel, is a really nice nib, and I'm enjoying it a lot. And that's been sort of the joy of this project, of really learning how much I like or dislike certain inks or certain pens. Yeah, so anyway, so my first volume is entirely done. It's housed in here, which I'll talk about in a moment. So this was a Naname Cafe Notes A5, and this one that I just finished has different line spacing, and I believe is the old version of the Tomoe River paper. I've mentioned on the channel before that Tomoe River paper is being manufactured by a different company with different process. And so this is the old paper, I'm pretty certain, and then this one that I'm working in now is the new version of the notebook, and the spacing is different. So I'll kind of show you the differences there and the differences that I've noticed in the paper itself, but I'm not going to go too much into this second volume that I'm working on. I'm really going to focus on showing you the completed first volume. And it's not really completed because I still have illustrations to do and some decorations in the front. What I'm done with is the transcription of the first half of the book, because as you can see, I'm actually more than halfway through, so I'm pretty sure I'll be able to do this in 2 volumes, especially given the difference in line spacing, which I'll go into. So this notebook here, I want to preface this by saying that this is a notebook that is no longer available. This style has been discontinued, and this is an earlier version of the Enchanted Woods leather in Eastwood, which is no longer available either. There are currently versions of this leather available on the website, so I'll go ahead and link to Chic Sparrow below, but you're not going to be able to find this particular model notebook anymore. So this is a first run of this leather and notebook, and it's one of my favorites actually. It's an A5. The only problem is I had 2 deep gouges in the front here, and they weren't really gouges. They were more like scratches. I think it was just from either my fingernail or something that brushed up against it. And I put some of the Chic Sparrow leather balm on, and really what I should have done is put something like a marker of a similar color and then put the conditioning balm on so that I wouldn't have to put it on so thick, because now I have this really thick coating in these 2 areas. You can't see the scratch very well, or the scratches very well, but you can definitely see this sort of thick wax that I've put on here. I'm thinking of maybe trying to go over it with a hairdryer or something like that, something that I can put on a low setting and see, just to sort of see if I can melt it into the leather or if I can just wipe it off with that. But I've been a little afraid to do that, and I wanted to stop where I was for the time being. I also have some leather cleaner that I could possibly use, but again, I don't know what effect the leather cleaner would have on this leather, so we'll see. And this notebook has darkened quite a bit since I got it. It was quite a bit lighter when I first got it, because this is a leather that will patina over time. All right, enough about the notebook. Let's go ahead and get to what I really want to show you today, which is the first volume of this book. So my intent is to put this volume and the second volume, once it's completed, together in this notebook, in this traveler's notebook, and then have it permanently housed in here, so that this will essentially be the book that is handwritten. I put, at least for now, I put this Nisa-made A5 cork wallet insert in here. I took it out of a different A5 while I was rearranging some things, and I don't know if I'll leave this in here. It really depends on how much space I have with both of these notebooks in here. But it's just really just a placeholder for now. So so I really have only the one notebook. And I don't have anything in the pockets yet except for this really cute little charm that I got off of Etsy. I'll see if I can find the name of the shop and link it down below. But and I'm not really sure how I want to keep this in here because it doesn't have any holes or anything to put on the strings. But it might just be nice to have it as sort of a little surprise tucked into this little pocket, because I thought it was really perfect with the rabbit theme. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and get in here. I haven't further decorated the cover. I think I may have underlined the words because it looked a little better to me that way, but that's it. And I finished going through the contents. I'm still, or writing the contents at the beginning, but I'm still sort of wondering if I should page number all the pages. I do have an automatic page number, sort of like little stamping machine. I don't know what you call them, but I'm not sure I really have room. I might be able to do them up at the top, and that might be what I end up doing, but I haven't decided that yet. And if I did have page numbers for the start of each chapter, I would obviously put that down here. So I don't intend to do a complete flip through. I can't say flip through lately. It's very hard. So I don't intend to do a complete flip through of every page because that would take forever. But what I do plan to do is just sort of quickly flip through each chapter, just so that you can see the writing generally, and then I'll show you which pen I did for each chapter. So, so this first one here was a Sailor 1911 large in the hard medium 21 karat nib with Robert Oster hot pink. And this pen, I love this pen. This is one of my favorites. If I have not posted my recent favorites video yet, if I have, I will put a link down below. But if I have not, spoiler alert for that video, this is one of the favorites that I listed for fountain pens. For recent favorites, because it's an amazing pen to write with. I found that I've really been liking Sailors. Okay, so then this next one, I think that this was a Pelican here. And see, this chapter was very short. Yeah, so this was my Pelican M400 Extra Fine in Organic Studios Oscar's Copper. So it's really pretty color. And then some of the chapters you'll see ended up being, in the end, probably a little bit hard to read, but I don't know. We'll see. So this was my Pilot Custom 74 with my purple, with a medium nib. And this was Robert Oster Viola. And Viola, I found, is an ink that's a little bit better writing in short spurts rather than long writing sessions, because it does tend to fade the longer you write with it. And that could also be a function of the pen itself, the feed just not being able to keep up or something. Okay, so here is this next chapter, and this is a Twisty Diamond 580 in the Prussian blue, and this is Organic Studio Aldous Huxley. And this, I may have shown this before actually. I kind of think that the extra fine nib, at least for the Twisbys, has been really good for writing. And this is where I noticed I had some some empty pages. And as you can see, these chapters are really short, so it's kind of nice to be able to do that by pen. So this is my Diplomat Arrow with a medium steel nib, and the ink is Sailor Shikiori Rikyucha. And this is another ink that is really one of my favorites, and the pen as well. And then here we've gone back to another finer pen. This is the Sailor Pro Gear Mini, my pink one. This is Sailor Blue Black. It's just a cartridge that was in there. And it's actually quite a nice color, I think. And then here we go with another lighter ink. This is a Twisby Diamond 580, a green one with 1.1 stub nib. This is Sailor 162, and actually I incorrectly labeled this as Manyo Haha, and I went in with correction tape, and what's kind of interesting is when I went back to correct over, well, first off, it was a little hard to write over the correction tape with the fountain pen, but it looks like more of the purple's coming out, so that's kind of interesting. Okay, so let's keep going here. This was another lovely pen and ink combination. This was, I ran to the bottom of the page, this is a Pelican M400 with a medium nib, which it's a vintage Pelican, so that might be why it's not writing like crazy broad. And this was Diamine November Rain, which is a really beautiful color. And I think this is part of the chapter that I wrote on camera with this lovely, lovely ink. It is with the Pelican M120 Iconic Blue and an extra fine nib with Diamine Polar Glow. And this one has a really, yeah, you can kind of see it there. It has a really great sheen to it that comes off as very red and pretty. And this was another fun ink and pen combination. Part of the reason why I think I've gotten through this so fast is that, this is obviously a longer chapter, is that I've been really, really loving writing with these fountain pens. So this is the Birmingham Pen Company Barbados with a medium nib, and the ink is Pilot Iro Shizuki. Oh God, I can never say that. Let's just say it's Pilot Kujaku is the color, and it's a really beautiful sort of tealy blue that runs more blue. And then this one here, this one got lighter as I went on. This is Franklin's Christoph 45L with a fine nib, and that is Robert Oster Cherry Blossom. And I determined that this ink was just too light. This was written with a sample that I had, a sample of the ink, and I essentially threw it away and decided that I was not going to buy any because it's very hard to read as you go forward in reading. And with writing with it, it got lighter and lighter as I went on. Okay, and this was another light one, and I actually, so these two, there's two pens here, and then I went on and wrote with a different pen. Sorry, had to check what that was. So I had to stop writing with these pens because you could not read it very well. So this was Pen BBS 309 with a fine nib in Sailor Manyo Haha, for real this time. So this is all Manyo Haha. And then this was done with the Narwhal Schuylkill medium nib in the Vinta Peria. And they're very similar in how they look, but I just could not really go on with that because I knew that it would be very, very hard to read. So I kind of went the exact opposite direction and went with a lot darker ink here. And this has become one of my favorite inks. Oh, and that was part of the reason because it was such a long chapter. I didn't want to go on with that lighter ink. So this is with my TWSBI Eco White Rose Gold pen in medium, and it's Robert Oster Thunderstorm, which really has become one of my favorite inks. And then, okay, here's the next one. It's a beautiful color here again. So this was all with my vintage Waterman sort of tortoiseshell looking pen in a fine 18 karat nib, and this is Robert Oster Astorquizza Rot. And this again is one of my favorite inks. And then this was, even though it's kind of light and bright, it is actually a very legible ink. And another long chapter. So this was with a TWSBI Eco T mint blue with a medium nib, Birmingham Pen Company ink in Rodman Gunpowder Tea. And the Birmingham Pen Company inks are actually really, really nice. I mean, okay, I shouldn't generalize because this is the only one that I have and have used. It flowed really nice, and I think, like I said, even though it's a lighter color ink, it's very legible, and it's very nice. Okay, and then I went back again to a little bit darker. So this one, this is with a Sailor 1911 Junior with a medium fine nib, and it is Sailor Gentle Epinard. So you can see that that medium fine nib is fairly fine. And then here we go. I'll just, like I said, flip through. And this was a pen that I really enjoyed writing with. And even though it's cursive, and this pen is really more for block lettering, this is my TWSBI Diamond 580 Rose Gold with an Architect nib in the medium Architect nib. With Robert Oster Astorquizza Rot again. So I did duplicate some inks, and part of it's because I really liked working with the ink, and part of it is because I wanted the ink in that particular pen, and I wanted to write with the pen. So this was another ink that had some issues with each time I would write with it. by the time I finished writing with it, it got fairly light, but I felt like it wasn't a deal breaker. It was still dark enough to read. So this is with a different Waterman Filius. I have a blue and a red one. And this was with Sailor Gentle ink Pesh. So if you're wondering, you know, how dark Pesh looks written, there you go. That's with a medium nib. And oh, it looks like, yeah, so the chapter did actually continue, and eventually I stopped and decided not to write with that one. Okay, so my camera stopped filming because I got a call, and of course it's like a spam call, so that was useful. But anyway, I'll try to remember where I was. So I continued on with this pink ink, and then I just thought, because the chapter was really, really long, I thought, you know, I should not be continuing with this pink. It's going to be hard to read when I finally go back. So I switched to this pen and ink, which I have not shown on the channel yet. So this is the same Franklin Christoph 45L, but I got a medium SIG nib. And then the ink is Robert Oster Fire and Ice. And I had some issues with ink flow in the SIG nib. I'm going to try and clean out this pen and try it again later. But I only did a couple pages with this one too, because it just was getting hard to write with. This chapter was clearly very troublesome because I tried another pen. So this was the Twisty Diamond Mini, the gold one that I have with an extra fine nib, and it had a gold ink with shimmer in it, which I think you might be able to see a little bit. It's just really not coming off. And my pen kept getting clogged. So and this has been a consistent problem with the TWSBI extra fine nibs if you use a shimmer ink. So I learned that lesson, so I stopped again, and then I started up again here, and then I ended up with my trusty old Thunderstorm ink again in a different pen. So this was my Esterbrook Vintage black pen with a fine nib with the Thunderstorm in it. And I think that this was just the dollar pen that I have. Writes beautifully. Love it. So that chapter was a little bit troublesome, but I definitely learned a lot from it in that, you know, which pens might give me some issues. And, you know, what I also learned is I don't want to have pens that give me issues. So if that's going to happen, I'm just not going to write with it, or I'll see if I can fix it. And then if I can't, I might end up getting rid of the pens that cause me trouble, because fountain pens are meant to be enjoyed, not be frustrated by. Okay, so here's another chapter here, and I'm just going to go to the end. This was another really long chapter. So this is another Sailor 1911 Junior. It was the one that I have in red. And it is with just a Sailor black cartridge. So I wanted to see how that would write, and it seems to write beautifully. Okay, and then I went back to a blue ink for this one. Another long chapter. So this is, oh, and this was another favorite that I discovered, this Platinum 3776, my black one with a medium nib, and it just has a platinum blue cartridge. So this is just regular old blue ink. And then this one, which is another beautiful blue ink. And you can see, you know, there's some errors here and there, and depending on the day, I either felt more like writing or I didn't. So this is with a TWSBI Diamond 580 Mini, the clear one that I have in an extra fine nib, and this is with Diamine Oxford Blue, which is it's a beautiful ink, and it does have some sheen to it, but I'm not sure you're going to be able to see it too well. The other ink that had the sheen came off a little better. And then this one, this was an ink that is another one that would fade as I wrote, but I think it's still legible. This was with my TWSBI Eco Cement Gray with a bold nib, and it is Troublemaker Petrichor. And you'll see the bold nib is not that bold. It's actually more like what I would expect to be sort of, maybe it's sort of like a broad medium. Okay, and then here, this one, again, this pen was just writing too, this pen and ink was just writing too light, so I stopped again here. So this is the Traveler's Company Factory Green pen with a fine nib, and it's with this Herbin Gris Nuage. It just was becoming illegible, so I switched to another ink. So this one, Another really long chapter. That's probably one of the longest ones. Okay, so this is with a TWSBI Eco pink one, and it is with a fine nib, and it's with platinum lavender black. And what's really fun about these colors that are part color, part black from platinum, is that when you write with them, they darken over time. So when I first started writing with these, it looked pretty light, but then as it sat and I went on, it got dark enough to be really legible, actually. And this is also one of my favorites. I love this ink and pen combination. I'll show you. Oh, it looks like that was a long one. It's probably why I use so much ink, because it's a really broad pen and it requires so much writing. Okay, so this is the Tatcha Spotlight, and it is with Ackerman SBRE Brown. And that Tatcha Spotlight has a music nib. And this was so enjoyable to write with. Even though it's kind of broad, I mean, it obviously took up more space, but it's fairly legible, I think. And it just made my handwriting look kind of nice, which I liked as well. But this one was just a joy to write with. And I didn't want to stop writing with it. Okay, we're approaching the end here. So this is another really thin nib. And I find that if the nibs are too thin, like this one, I felt like this one kind of actually made my handwriting look a little messier, just because I feel like you have a little bit more room to make mistakes if your lines are slightly broader. This was another 1911, Sailor 1911 Junior, in the clear brown, and this was certainly the thinnest of all of the 1911 Juniors that I have. And this was with Sailor Shikiori Do You cartridge. So it said that it was supposed to be sort of a brown, but I find that it's more of a greenish neutral in there, at least from this pen. If your pen has a wider nib, it might come off a little different. Okay, so then here we go. This one is another broad nib that I actually really enjoyed writing with. And a long chapter too. Yeah, this one I also used a lot of ink. So this is a Lamy Studio Imperial Blue with a broad nib. And this is just a stainless steel broad, and it was lovely. It was very smooth. Occasionally, if my pen would over twist, there would be a little bit of a scratch on the paper, but if I made sure I held it properly, it went back to being super duper smooth. And the ink is Robert Oster Carbon Fire, which is a beautiful, beautiful ink. Highly recommend. Okay, so then this one was one of my newer Pelikan vintage pens, the 400 NN with a fine nib, and this is Robert Oster Gold Antica. And this pen, I think I need to get tuned, although it still writes just fine. This particular pen does clearly have some some nib alignment issues that I would like to get fixed, but in the meantime, it still writes. So, and then, oh, is this, did I use Thunderstorm yet again? I think I did. So this one, and this is actually continued in volume 2, so this will be a good time to talk about the differences in the paper. And then I will go to the end of this chapter, and you'll see the format is a little different, and I'll kind of compare them. So this was another one of my favorites. This was the Lamy Dialogue 3 matte black in 14K fine nib with Robert Oster Thunderstorm. The good old Robert Oster's Thunderstorm. Okay, so as you'll see, I went ahead and wrote on every line, but skipped a line for each paragraph, because the spacing was such that because here I skipped every other, I wrote on every other line because the squares are just super small. This is a dot grid, and let me see, I'm going to turn it to a blank page here and I'll show you. They're definitely a lot, let's see if I can compare the two. They're definitely a lot wider spaced apart than this dot grid, or this regular grid, I should say. So, So I changed the format a little bit. I actually think this will allow me to write more on a page, which I don't know if it's good or bad, because I think that either way, I was going to end up just using 2 volumes, and that would be right for this book. I find it a little bit harder to read with writing on every line, as opposed to having just that little bit of extra visual space, like here. So the difference is in the paper itself. So this paper definitely feels a little bit thicker. And by little bit, I mean just really a little bit. It's not huge, but this is definitely thinner than this new one. And I do notice a little bit of difference in how the pen glides on the paper. Even with just these 2 samples, you may not be able to tell very well, but this is a little bit lighter. This was a little bit darker. It's the same color. So this looks a little bit darker on this paper, and this looks just a little bit lighter on this paper. And I think that that's really just the difference in the paper. But I think it still shows off inks very well. And let's see, do I have something? I don't think I have. So like here, this is a shading ink, which I think shows off well. I don't think I have any sheeners in here. Otherwise I would show you that. But I think that the differences are fairly small. And I'm not even really sure I prefer one over the other, or if I just kind of feel like they're kind of in the same league. So, but I did want to raise that, and this is from the latest batch that I got from Naname, this this notebook, because I'd had this one lying around for a while, and then they were out of stock for a while, and then this one came in, and it's clearly the new paper. So, and that's just really based on the difference in feel, for sure. Okay, so that was it, I think. I am going to put a link to all those videos that I indicated below. So this notebook, I'm just going to put a link to, like I said, to the video where I talked about this setup, and that'll tell you the details about this notebook and what the setup is. And if I didn't mention and you probably noticed, the cover fell off of the book, so I am using the cover as a bookmark now. So this is just, and then the end of the book is all kind of peeled back. But this book will eventually be used for tearing up and using in mixed media, so this is kind of where it's going to end up anyway. So I was kind of happy that this happened, because now I can feel more okay about tearing the book up later down the road. Okay, so that's it for today. Feel free to subscribe to keep track of future videos, and I hope to see you there. Until then, have a great day. Thanks. Bye.